Mantras of our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother says we are not here to make our life easy and comfortable. We are here to find the divine, to become the divine, to manifest the divine. With always our love and blessings, says our Divine Mother. Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, Book 3, the Book of the Divine Mother, Canto 4, the Vision and the Bone. Then, suddenly, there rose a sacred stir. Amid the lifeless silence of the void, in a solitude and an immensity, a sound came quivering like a loved football heard in the listening spaces of the soul. A touch perturbed his fibers with delight. An influence had approached the mortal range. A boundless heart was near his longing heart. A mystic form enveloped his earthly shape. All at her contact broke from silence seen. Spirit and body thrilled, identified, linked in the grasp of an unspoken joy. Mind, members, life were merged in ecstasy. Intoxicated as with nectareous rain, his nature's passioning stretches flowed to her, flashing with lightnings, mad with luminous wine. All was a limitless sea that hemmed to the moon. A divinizing stream possessed his veins. His body cells awoke to spirit sense. Each nerve became a burning thread of joy. Tissue and flesh partook beatitude. Allied the dun, unplumbed subconscious caves, thrilled with the prescience of her longed for tread, and filled with flickering crests and praying tongues. Words of our Divine Mother taken from the compilations of the works of our Divine Mother, book The Sunlit Path, page 91, topic The Divine Work, subtopic The Three Victories. Our Divine Mother says the first victory is to create an individuality. Then later, the second victory is to give this individuality to the divine. And the third victory is that the divine changes your individuality into a divine being. There are 3 stages. The first is to become an individual. The second is to consecrate the individual, that he may surrender entirely to the divine and may be identified with him. And the third is that the divine takes possession of this individual and changes him into a being in his own image. That is, he too becomes divine. Generally, all the yoga stop. Generally, all the yoga stopped at the second, when one had succeeded in surrendering the individual and giving him without reserve to the divine to be identified with him. One is considered that his work was finished, that all was accomplished. And our Divine Mother says, but we begin there. And we say, no, this is only a beginning. We want this divine with whom we are identified to enter our individuality and make it a divine personality acting in a divine world. And this is what we call transformation. But the other precedes it, must precede it. If that is not done, there is no possibility of doing the third. One can't go from the first to the third. One must pass through the second, says our Divine Mother.
Remplis les cœurs des délices de ton amour, Seigneur. Inonde les esprits des splendeurs de ta lumière. Permets que nous réalisions ta victoire. Lord, fill our hearts with the delight of thy love. Flood our minds with the splendor of thy light. Grant that we may manifest thy victory.
Bhadram karणे shrinvamah Om bhadram chakshurhirevalokayamah Om bhadram manubhishchintayamah Bhadram vahuvih sadhayamah Om rasuvai saha
नमस्तेस्तु महारौद्रे महाघोर पराक्रमे महाबले महोत्साहे महाभय विनाशिनि त्राहि मां देवी दुष्प्रेक्ष्ये शत्रुणां भयवर्धिनि सर्वस्वरूपे सर्वस्ये सर्वशक्तिसमन्विते भयव्यस्त्राहि नो देवी दुर्गे देवी नमस्तुते ॐ यस्मिन् सर्वे यतः सर्वे यः सर्वः सर्वतश्च यः यश्च सर्वमयो देवस्तस्मै सर्वात्मने नमः देवस्तस्मै सर्वात्मने नमः
तामुपे शरणं परमेश्वरि तामुपे
Next words of our Divine Mother taken from the other topic, the spirit and the psychic being, spiritual experience. Question, sweet mother, you speak of spiritual experience. What is an experience and how can one have it? For this, our Divine Mother says, it is something which puts you in contact with a consciousness higher than the one you usually have. You have a certain feeling about yourself. You are not even aware of it. It is for you your ordinary condition. You understand? Well, if suddenly you become conscious within of something very different, very much higher than whatever it may be, it will be a spiritual experience. You may formulate it with a mental idea. You may not formulate it. You may explain it to yourself or you may not. It may be instantaneous. And when there is this essential difference in the consciousness, naturally the quality that comes is very much higher, clearer, purer than what one usually has. Then one has to call this as spiritual experience. then one can call this as a spiritual experience. This means there are thousands of different things which can be called as spiritual experience. The child says, "Sweet mother, should we aspire to have a spiritual experience?" For this, our Divine Mother says, "I think it is wiser to aspire to make progress, or to be more conscious, or to be better, or do better than aspire for a spiritual experience, because that might open the door to more or less imaginary, falsified experiences, to moments of the vital which takes on the appearance of higher things. One may deceive oneself by having an aspiration for experience. In fact, the experience must come spontaneously as the result of inner progress, but not for itself or in itself. Next subtopic, come out of words. Our Divine Mother says the main trouble is that you think with words, but these words are empty of meaning. Most of the time, they are more of mere words. You talk of the divine, you talk of the supreme, you talk of yoga. You say many things, but does all that correspond in your head or to something concrete, to a thought, to a feeling, a clear idea, or an experience? Or are they simply words? Our Divine Mother says you must see the thing, the experience behind the words. Here we speak of integral yoga, but elsewhere one would speak differently. Some would say, "I'm seeking my raison d'etre," and so on. Those who have a religious bent will say, "I want to find the divine presence." There are 50 ways of saying the thing, but it is the thing which is more important. You must feel it in your head. You must feel it in your head, in your heart, and everywhere. It must be concrete, living. Otherwise, you cannot advance. You must come out of words and get into action, get into the experience, get into life. Next subtopic, connecting that. Our Divine Mother says there is something, there is a reality which is beyond all our experiences and expressions, but which we can succeed in by contacting or practicing a discipline. Once one is identified with it, one knows what it is, but one cannot express it. For the words cannot say it. So, if you use one kind of vocabulary, or if you have a particular mental conviction, you will use the vocabulary corresponding to that conviction. If you belong to another group which has another way of speaking, you call it or even think about it in that way. That the true expression, there is nothing that cannot be grasped by thought but which does exist. But the name you give it matters very little, that's of no importance. It does exist. Our Divine Mother says, so the only thing to do is to enter into contact with it, not to give it a name or describe it. In fact, there's hardly anything, any use giving it a name or describing it. One must try to enter into contact, to concentrate upon it, to live it, live that reality. And whatever the name you give it is not at all important once you have the experience. Our Divine Mother says the experience alone counts, and when people associate the experience with a particular expression, and in so narrow a way, so closed up in itself, that apart from this formula, one can find nothing, that is an inferiority. One must be able to live that reality through all possible paths, all occasions, all formations. One must live it. For that indeed is true, for that is supremely good. that is all powerful, that knows all, that yes, one can live that, but one cannot speak about it. And if one does speak, all that one says about it has no great importance. It is only a way of speaking, that is all. There is an entire line of philosophers and people who have replaced the notion of God by the notion of an impersonal absolute, or by a notion of truth, or a notion of justice, or even by a notion of progress, of something eternally progressive. But for one who has within him the capacity of identifying himself with that, what has been said about it hasn't much importance. Sometimes one may read a whole book of philosophy and not a progress is made even a step further. Sometimes one may be a quite fervent devotee of a religion and not progress. There are people who have spent their lifetime seated in contemplation and attain nothing. There are people, we have well known examples, who used to do the most modest of the manual works, like a cobbler mending old shoes who had an experience. It's altogether beyond what one thinks and says of it. It's some gift that's there, that's all. And all that is needed is to succeed in identifying oneself with it and live it. At times, you may read one sentence in a book that leads you there. Sometimes you read the entire book and you get nowhere. There are, however, people for whom the reading of philosophy books helps to go ahead, but all these things are secondary. There is only one thing that's important, that is, a sincere and persistent will, for these things don't happen in a twinkling. So one must persevere. When one feels that he is not advancing, he must not get discouraged. He must try to find out what is in the nature that is opposing and then make the necessary progress. And suddenly one goes forward. And when you reach the end, you have an experience. And what is remarkable is that people who have followed altogether different paths with altogether different mental constructions, from the greatest believer to the most unbelieving, even the materialists, have arrived at that experience. It is the same for everyone because it is true, because it is real, because it is a soul reality. Our Divine Mother says, and it is quite simply that. I do not say anything more. This is of no importance. The way one speaks about it, what is important is to follow the path. Your path, no matter where, which one, yes, to go there. Next subtitle, Birth into the Spirit. Our Divine Mother says, in the individual existence, the spirit is what makes all the difference. So, as long as one just speaks of the spirit, it is something one has read about, whose existence one vaguely knows about, but not a very concrete reality for the consciousness. This means that one is not born with the spirit. When one is born into the spirit, it becomes something much more concrete, much more living, much more real, much more tangible than the whole material world. And this is what makes the essential difference between beings. When that becomes spontaneously real, the true concrete existence, the atmosphere one feels is free to breathe, then one knows that one has crossed over to the other side. But so long as it is something rather vague and hazy, you have heard about it, you know it exists, but it has no concrete reality. This means that the new birth has not yet taken place. Next subtopic, reversal of consciousness. Our Divine Mother says, there is a moment, because it is a question which becomes more and more intense, more and more acute, when You have even the feeling precisely that the things are strange, that they are not real. A moment comes when this sensation that you have of yourself becomes strange, a sense of unreality. And the question continues and says, but then what is myself? Well, there is a moment when it comes up with so much concentration, such intensity that with this intensity of concentration, suddenly there occurs a reversal. Instead of being on one side, you are on the other side. And when you are on that side, everything is simple. You understand? You know, you live and you see the unreality of the rest. That is enough. You see, one may have to wait for days and months and years and centuries and lives before this moment comes. But if one intensifies his aspiration, there is a moment when the pressure is so great, intensity of the question is so strong that something turns over in the consciousness, and then this is absolutely what one feels. Instead of being here, one is there. Instead of seeing from outside, seeks to see from within. One is inside, and the minute one is within, absolutely everything changes completely, and all that seemed to him true, natural, normal, real, tangible, all that immediately, yes, it seems to him very gross, very queer, very unreal, very absurd. But one has touched something which is supremely true, eternally beautiful, and this one never loses again. Once the reversal has taken place, you can glide into the external consciousness, not to lose the ordinary contact with the things of life, but remain and it never moves. You may, in your dealings with others, fall back a little into ignorance and blindness, but there is always something there living, standing up within, which does not move anymore until it manages to penetrate everything to the point where it is over, where the blindness disappears forever. And this is absolutely a tangible experience, something more concrete than the most concrete object. This is why I always say when people ask me how one can know whether he is in contact with a psychic being or how one may know whether he has found the divine, it makes me laugh because when it happens to you, it is over. You can no longer ask any questions. It is done. You do not ask anything more. It is done. Our Divine Mother says, in the ordinary life, there's not a person in a million who has a conscious contact with his psychic being, even momentarily. The psychic being may work from within, but so invisibly, unconsciously, for the outer being, it is as though it does not exist. And in most cases, the immense majority, the totality of the cases, it is as though it were asleep in a kind of torpor. It is only with sadhana, with a persistent effort, that one succeeds in having a conscious contact with his psychic being, says our Divine Mother.